The Bronx, New York City's northernmost borough and one of 5 poorest congressional districts in the U.S., populated with a diverse array of income levels, just minutes away from Riverdale, home to Manhattan College. At the corner of East 199th Street and Marion Avenue is a Victorian-style house that is home to a community of like-minded individuals. The journey began in 1977 at St. Augustine's, where brothers Bill Fecto and Ed Phelan served together.
Ed was principal of the school there and the director of the community. Ed was moving on to another area of work, and the pastor of the church took that as an opportunity to take the school in a new direction. And we had been in that place for over 100 years.
Bill parted in the summer of '77 and went to work in Queens, while Ed left for the 3-month retreat center Sangre de Cristo in Santa Fe, New Mexico.
And so it was after that experience that I came back to New York. I think I was 38. And he was 20-something, 29 maybe.
28.
And Bill and I got together several times to talk about the next step for a community in the South Bronx. And I have to tell you, there was one afternoon that I'll never forget, where the two of us met on a street corner in the South Bronx, 150th Street and Melrose Avenue. And we both said to each other, it's time. We need to continue the community the sense of community that we had at St. Augustine's. When you're that age, you're capable of doing extraordinary things.
The community would begin near the corner of Melrose and 150th Street in the South Bronx and represent a vast mix of people, all committed to the mission of service to the poor.
At first it was only brothers, had a commitment to service to the poor. Had a certain openness too to people from the outside coming in.
The Lasallian Volunteers had begun in our area of the country.
The Lasallian Volunteers was the Christian Brothers' first official program to provide an opportunity for college graduates to serve in under-resourced communities throughout the United States. The Bronx community provided a space for young people working at educational and service institutions throughout New York City. While the community was initially made up of only men, this new community would gradually invite women to be part of this new way of thinking.
That simplicity of lifestyle led us to say, well, why don't we invite women into our community?
So my friend Karen McClelland came to New York, and she was a tutor in Brother Bill's GED class. Karen had met Mike Culligan, who was just formalizing the volunteer program, and he suggested she might want to do it, and she thought, well, we might want to do it. And there were 12 volunteers that year. So we were the first 2 women that joined the program.
The openness to outsiders and young people in particular, and women. Forget about it. Years ago, that nobody wanted volunteers because they didn't want women in the brother's house.
And that brought us into a little bit of a maverick kind of lifestyle as far as brothers were concerned.
So it was very different than living in an institutional place like other volunteers did.
That was right from the get-go. And that's because down below, when they were down further in the Bronx here, that was tradition there too.
By 2001, the community needed to make a move and find a new house. So a friend connected Brother Ed with a potential prospect.
He said to me that he heard we were looking for a house. And if we were, then why wouldn't we look into a house on Marion Avenue, 199th Street, our present location here? Why wouldn't we look at that? Because there was a group of sisters who was looking to sell that house.
We were out in front of on Marion Avenue. He parked in front of it. I saw the driveway. I saw how big it was. I said, this is the place. Immediately. I said, this is I didn't even look inside of it. I said, this is it. And he said, we haven't even talked about the price yet. I said, I don't care what the price is. Look, I want the money. This is it. This is the place.
It's the first time in our lives that the brothers, our district, then the New York district, was willing to purchase a residence for our community. We were permanent as a group, and we continued as a group, but always the property was a little less permanent, a lot less permanent. So this represented a change of heart by the New York district and the provincial team of the New York district, that they were willing to purchase a building. And it was a vote of confidence in us and in the community that we had already started.
With this newfound permanent space came the chance to grow the sense of family in the Bronx.
Living with Ed and Bill was like living with my family.
So I volunteered for a year in Albany at LaSalle School for Boys. Had a wonderful experience there. And during that time began dating Brenna. So I was trying to find a way to move down to the Bronx to be closer to her.
Joe also wanted to work with Brother Ed, who in turn invited him to start a newspaper for the community.
I said that sounded like a fun and fascinating project and had no experience as a journalist. And, it was a real grassroots community paper. I wound up really falling in love with journalism.
Joe eventually became a career journalist and currently works for Bloomberg News.
This place, this house, this community has been the anchor of our what's become our local family.
So Brenna and Joe, Ryan, have two boys. They live close by in the Bronx, and they are here easily every month.
My sons, Jack and Liam, have grown up with Ed and Bill.
We go to Mass at Fordham, and we see Ed at Mass sometimes.
And it's not just them that come back.
And if there's an event, it's often at this house because it's big enough to hold everybody, and so it's great to be able to come together here.
There is a small network of former LaSallian volunteers who live in the New York area and come together at Bedford Park.
Colleen McGeehan and her daughter.
I would say that, I have a few friends from lots of different parts of my life that I'm always connected to, but the biggest group is the LaSallian volunteer crowd. I just think they've always been so welcoming and so inclusive of us, and there's an open invitation, and you're included and invited. Jack and Yvette are another LaSallian connection. Jack's a former brother. They worked at Highbridge for many years after they came back from lots and lots of other missionary stuff.
So I looked around for a community in '74, and I had a couple of job offers, but they didn't, wasn't really what I wanted. So somebody suggested I go up to see Ed, because he had his finger into so many different things. So I went up to see Ed, and the first words out of Ed's mouth were very, very simple. He says, I don't know what you do, he says, but we want you.
Jack lived in our community for a while. Was on the missions in Africa with his wife, Yvette. They're all part of a group that come together here regularly. We provide the house, they provide the food, and the company.
And that's just how it goes at Bedford Park. All are welcome and invited to take on the work.
So I was a Loretto volunteer at the United Nations, and the Lorettos, part of them is living in community, but they don't have a community in New York. So the Loretto volunteer program knew about Brother Ed and the community, and so they worked out and so that I could be a volunteer here and lived in this community while I worked for that program. Ever since I left, I've been kind of LaSallian by association.
I work as a community service associate for WeWork.
This is what Pope Francis said to every religious order house in Europe. And this is what our Superior General has done at the center in Rome on Via Aurelia. They've made space available for refugees.
They accepted me, so that gave me the opportunity to find my feet here in America.
It's our opportunity to learn from him and to enjoy the company of a person who survived all of this. And he will be teaching us, and we're very grateful for the opportunity to be able to do this.
Because I get so many words of advice from the brothers who have, especially Brother Ed, who talks to me most of the times directly and indirectly gives me wonderful advice to be a better person. Yeah.
Community is a core tenet of this LaSallian home. Check-ins, meetings, and meals together keep everyone connected.
Making food for everybody is like, we're part of this community together. We're all gonna do this thing for each other.
We have a simplicity of lifestyle. That's been one of the cornerstones of our community. We try to go out of our way to be as open with each other as we possibly can.
Just look around the table, and if you see somebody that is not part of our community, 24/7, introduce them.
We want to have people here who have a commitment to service to the poor, which is very much in keeping with LaSallian principles. And that's also a very, very important part of it. It doesn't necessarily have to be in the area of education, but it does have to be in service. And so we have people working across the street at Serviam with senior citizens.
I'm the program coordinator here. I plan all events, so I have Zumba classes, arts and crafts, painting, yoga, DVD yoga, where they plug in a DVD and they do chair yoga, which is really cool.
We have another volunteer working over here at the POTS program, which is part of the solution, which is an enormous food pantry.
I'm one of the case managers, kind of volunteer coordinators here. I help with our pantry intake, so I help sign up our clients for our pantry every day. I also help with the case management side, which is helping clients sign up for their food stamp benefits and maybe a reduced fare Metro card, or just they need their mail read to them.
The cycle of life in this community renews with the changing faces of volunteers year after year.
Every year, those brothers live with a new crowd of recent college graduates. That's their home, but they live with a new group of them, and many of them stay for a year, 2 years, 3 years. But to see that they're able to do that over and over again is quite a gift that they give to a lot of young adults.
It's really not easy to have a new crop of people live with you every year. Like that's like putting up with me as a 22-year-old. Like, oh my God.
There's a very rich exchange going on here. They're keeping us young.
I just don't know how so many people from so many different cultures, ideas, and education can live so well together.
They adapt so easily, and the brothers are so accommodating that you honestly don't feel like you're 20 to 30 years apart from them. It feels like they're your same age, and they treat you like as an equal.
They just remind me of like my family, my grandparents. It's very modern, so hearing about how long this community has been here, they adapt really easily to every volunteer.
That means that like every year the community not only changes in terms of people, but in terms of how it's run, and it adapts to whoever is living here.
They bring a youthful enthusiasm and a future-oriented look about things that can sometimes be a beautiful mix with older, experienced brothers.
I mean, as brothers, we were all men together, and especially like overseas. I mean, you had different problems over there, and we were forced to have one big family because we were in a foreign land, and we formed a very, very close community. How that happened here is, to me, is kind of a miracle, miraculous.
People ask me, what's the most difficult part? What would be the most difficult challenge it is to living with young people? And and they mention things like, well, you have to reintroduce them to community. You have to show them where the grocery list is. You have to show them what jobs to do and to make them keep up with their chores that they have to do, because some 24 and 25-year-olds don't like to do dishes very well. And it's just what it is. It is what it is. And these are the challenges. I said, no, that's not the challenge. That is a challenge. That is always a challenge. But the most difficult thing is saying goodbye to them.
Ed and Bill are such amazing people.
They have a world view of things, not just your neighborhood view. They have a world view.
I think they push the Christian brothers to broaden their idea of the world and their role in it, as far as like vowed religious people go. By being in this house, they've always lived in a place that's part of a neighborhood, and they've shopped in that neighborhood and gone to church in that neighborhood and met neighbors in that neighborhood.
I mean, home is a big word for this community. Like, it's something that's very important, I think, for everybody, that like all the volunteers that come through here, all the brothers that are living here, like every guest that comes into the house, like it tries to be like a home environment.
And it's always very welcoming, and no matter who you are, where you come from, you always get a sense that you're at home here.
This community embodies really approaching your life's work with a sense of purpose and meaning, and remind ourselves that we live in an exceedingly wealthy country and place, even though we can be surrounded by poverty. But that there are many who are forced to live with much less than we are.
But people hear you talk about it and they know you're talking about something special and something that's really hopeful. Like especially in a place like the Bronx, where sometimes things aren't always as hopeful as they can be.
I always saw it as being a very natural progression. One step leads to another step, as our founder said himself.
The trick is what's going on today and what's going to happen in the future. How can we reach out to these vulnerable families in the future?
As you take one step, it leads you to areas where you never thought you were going to be when you first took that first step.
what can you do for people in a LaSallian framework? Take all the experience between the earlier time and this time and use that for the good of today. It's very clear. And so this permanent location has ramifications that have spread all across the world, from people who have lived here, have nurtured their, I would say, LaSallian vocation. That's the word I would use. They've nurtured it here, they've learned skills, they've gained confidence in themselves as people and as teachers and as counselors, and they have gone out all across the world.